I'm about to show you something most agencies will never put on YouTube. We took over a Google Ads account just 17 days ago for a real estate investor. The previous agency had been running it for 6 months. And here's where we are at right now. We're currently sitting at $17,000 in ad spend. So far, we've already got them 4 wholesale contracts, which equates to about $100,000 in profit for our client. The previous agency had the same type of ad spend in the same account for 6 months, and they produced decent at $675,000 in client profit at 4x ROAS. So solid numbers overall. But right now, we're at 5.7x, a 44% ROAS improvement in just our first 2.5 weeks. And here's the kicker. Our vanity metrics look worse than theirs. We have a little bit higher cost per click, a little bit higher cost per Google conversion. If we were optimizing for the metrics that most agencies report, we'd look like we're losing. Today, I'm going to show you exactly why this works and the one technical decision that makes the entire difference. So I'll be screen sharing here and I'll show you a little bit about what we have going on. I'm not going to name the client publicly, but they do wholesale real estate deals in 3 markets here in St. Louis, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Wichita. Combined, their ad budget is around $39,000 per month. Now, some important context here, because you may have seen the 4x ROAS, the overall top line profit that they may have been getting with this previous agency. This agency owned their ad account. So our client was dumping in $39,000 a month in ad spend to Google, but they didn't own the data. And there was a lack of trust there because some of the vanity metrics that they were sending over in keywords and the reports, there was a lack of it. There was also lack of communication. And then from there, they're not even sure if their numbers of leads were accurate because they didn't own the ad account. So this ad account ran from October of 2025 through April of 2026. So again, the same type of Google Ads account, the same Salesforce CRM, the same WhatConverts call tracking, and the same offer. So when I show you a before and after, it's not 2 different businesses. It's one business under 2 different optimization strategies. Now, over those 6 months, the previous agency had spent about $169,000 that produced 27 contracts, and our client gets an average profit of around $25,000 per deal. Some much lower than that, some higher than that. So from a top line standpoint, right, that is $675,000 in revenue against $170,000 in ad spend. Now, also important to take a look at is their agency retainer, right, is not equated into that 4x ROAS, and their agency retainer was almost double what they're paying us to manage the same campaign. So the numbers are solid, but again, the math just ultimately didn't math. So we took this over on April 30th. Today, as I'm recording this video, it's May 19th. And here's the new structure. Here's what the new structure ultimately ended up producing. So as we take a look here at the next slide, we'll talk about some headline numbers that are right here and dive into all of this. So far, we've spent $17,477 that have equated to 4 wholesale contracts. So again, on average, this is going to put them around $100,000 in client profit. Net to the client after that spend is going to be $82,523. So our ROAS, again, just 2.5 weeks in, is 5.7x, which is a 44% increase from the prior agency being at that 4.0x. Here's where it gets really, really exciting. The cost per contract is $4,369 so far under our umbrella. Now, you might be looking at that and saying, well, to acquire a customer, that's pretty significant. Again, go back to their average profit per deal after all the expenses are paid is $25,000 in their pocket. The prior agency's blended cost per contract over those 6 months was $6,288. So already 2.5 weeks in, we are 31% cheaper per signed deal. And on their contract pace, they averaged 4.5 contracts per month, whereas we're already on pace for 6.9 per month. That's a 52% pace increase with better cost per contract, overall better quality of lead, better return on investment, and our agency fee is less than what they were paying there. And the most important data point in this entire video is that a lead came in on the first day one on April 30th of our brand new campaign, and they were able to sign a wholesale contract within 7 days. Now, industry norm for cash buyer lead to contract is typically 14 to 30 days by the time the lead, right, is generated to the lead actually signing a contract. So day one to contract in 7 days only happens when that search intent was already at the transactional stage. So at this point, right, you'd be thinking, okay, BOA must be running cheaper ads, better keywords, sharper bid management. And while that is true, right, the truth is that it's way more boring than that and way more important than that, because we're going to dive in here to some of the vanity metrics or some of the things that people might be taking a look at. So if you compared the same 30-day window, let's call it the last 30 days between the prior agency last year and us this year, here's what most agencies ultimately would report. Now, the cost per Google conversion, right, with the prior agency was $154. And with Builders of Authority so far, it's $246. We're 60% more expensive cost per conversion on paper. Now, obviously, we're 2.5 weeks in. We're working on driving down this cost, and it will get less expensive, but it's important to note that. The prior agency, same period, had 89 leads, whereas we only had 71. So again, on paper, we're producing 20% fewer conversions. And the average cost per click prior agency versus us is a little bit less. This is where we're going to dive into some of this report. So if I sent this report to the client, right, and said these numbers, hey, we're 60% more expensive on cost per conversion, our conversions are lower, 20% fewer, and on cost per clicks, we're more, right, they'd fire us tomorrow. So why did we willingly know and focus and take a strategy that makes the vanity metrics look worse? Because Google's definition of a conversion is a form fill or a phone call. Google has no idea whether that form fill turned into a wholesale contract. It can't see the client's Salesforce. It doesn't know which form fill was a real seller or lead versus somebody out there just tire kicking, comparing offers, or just curious about home values. The prior agency's top conversion producing keyword was "we buy houses" as a broad match keyword. That will drive a ton of cheap, low cost, unqualified form fills. So their lead to contract had a rate of 4.4%. which is super low. For every 23 leads they generated, only one became a signed deal. The other 22 were essentially tire kickers, comparison shoppers, people who got an offer but went the traditional route of getting a realtor instead. That's not a leads problem, although it is a quality of leads problem. That's a training problem with Google. The algorithm was being trained to find cheap form fills because that's what the conversion signal was. And that's what we found in the auditing process, and ultimately why we've been thus successful just in 2.5 weeks. Here's the move we made, and here's the move we take with our clients. This is the thing that most agencies are so bad at doing, and it's the entire reason why we've already beaten the prior agency from a ROAS standpoint by 44% in just 17 days. Meanwhile, if you work with most marketing agencies, they're going to tell you it's going to take 90 days for us to get any sort of better result than you were previously getting typically. So these results are only going to get better. We are using WhatConverts for call tracking and contact form. Our client, they use Salesforce as their CRM. When a wholesale contract gets signed, it It gets marked in Salesforce. We then wire it so that the Salesforce contract event flows back into WhatConverts, that then flows into Google Ads as the conversion signal, not the form fill, not the phone call. So when Google's bidding algorithm is deciding which keyword to spend more on, it's not asking which keyword produced the cheapest form. It's asking which keyword produced actual return on investment for a client, which contract was signed from what keyword that was worth $25,000 in profit. Google's bidding algorithm, right, hasn't changed. The Google Ads platform has changed, but it's still the same thing. What has changed is our ability to feed data back into it and train the algorithm as such. So this is what the full cycle looks like and what the prior agency was also not doing, and our client didn't own the ad account, which was like a double whammy. We're going to take a look at this slide here, which goes over 4 of the keywords, right? This slide, the 4 keyword slide of where the contracts have came from already. So look at this, 4 contracts in 2.5 weeks. They came from 4 specific keywords right here. Companies that buy houses near me, an exact match search, meaning that was the exact thing that they typed in. We buy houses for cash, which was the exact match keyword that they typed in. We buy houses for cash. It was a phrase match. So that phrase was used in the keyword search term. We buy houses, Little Rock, exact match. So that was the exact keyword that they typed in. Every single one of those is a transactional search term inquiry. Somebody typing in companies that buy houses near me is not researching their home value. They've already decided to sell their house to a cash buyer. They're just now picking the company. So the total spend across those 4 keyword match type combinations is around $3,683. So roughly around $920 per contract on the keywords that actually produced revenue. Now, it's early on, right? Some of the keywords in the rest of the $13,800 budget, right, have gone to discovery and leads that have been generated that still will. Some of the leads that have already been generated over the last 2.5 weeks will end up turning into contracts too. We're trying to figure out what keywords are getting the best return on investment, just like those. And now that real contract signals are flowing back into Google, the algorithm starts to learn that those 4 are the gold and starts to hunt for other siblings that will also generate revenue for our client. Here's what the ads look like as well. We took a look at some of the ads that they were running because, again, we didn't own the ad account, but we were able to see, based on doing some of the research, kind of what they were compiled of, and there were some emails that were sent back and forth with the previous agency and our client. So we know a little bit about what they kind of looked like. So we dove a little bit deeper. So we have 2 creative families running concurrently. We're A/B testing, positioning, what's working and what's not. Family A leads with differentiators, right? Honest offer guarantee, veteran owned, the things competitors typically aren't saying, but that aren't unique to most businesses, right? They're unique to our client. Family B leads with the benefits, cash in 7 days, no agent fees, close on your timeline. Now, both go to landing pages that matches the ad promise. And critically, we're measuring landing page performance on contracts, not form submissions. A page that fills more forms is not necessarily a page that produces more contracts and return on investment. And luckily, because of all this stuff, we can tell the difference. Now, let me show you the actual profit math of what is going to happen because they switched over to us, because this is the part that should matter to every business owner watching. Every wholesale contract this client signs produces about $25,000 in profit. That's their average, right? Some lower, some higher. The prior agency was generating them a contract for every $6,288 per contract. Profit after the ad cost, not including their management fee, right, was around $18,000 per deal. So that 4x ROAS. With BOA already, ad spend per contract is at $4,369. Profit after the ad cost is $20,631. So that 5.7 ROAS. So the difference per contract is $1,918 more in our client's pocket on every single deal, not to mention what they're saving and working with us from an ad management standpoint. Over the 4 contracts that we've already signed, $7,672 more dollars in our client's pocket than the prior agency would have been produced on those same contracts. And we're only 17 days. If we maintain the current pace, that is 6.9 contracts per month, and the algorithm keeps learning, we're looking at roughly 83 contracts a year. At a $4,369 cost per contract, that's about $362,000 in ad spend, producing $2 million in client revenue with a net profit around $1.72 million. The prior agency, on their 4.5 contracts per pace month, would deliver 54 contracts a year at $6,288 per contract. That's $339 in ad spend, producing $1.3 million in revenue with a net million right at $1 million. So same client, same budget, but $700,000 more profit per year because we wired the system to learn on signed contracts instead of form fills. Now, I want to be straight with you because most YouTube agency videos lie about a lot of things, or they'll lie about this part. There are some things that we're still working on 2.5 weeks into this campaign. One, St. Louis is our most expensive market right now that we're in. It's the most competitive market. It's the one that we're spending the most dollars on because there's so much competition. We're at $5,277 per contract there. Still cheaper than the prior agency's $7,455 historical agency contract. Now, we want this under $4,000, and we will get there. But number 2 is our cost per Google form is higher than the prior agencies. I'm not going to pretend that it isn't. We're just making them more money and getting them higher quality leads. That's the trade. We're producing fewer leads, but better leads. The math still works because contracts pay 50x what leads cost. And we will drive down that cost per lead with time, with optimization, with better targeting. And then number 3, our Little Rock competitor campaign is still ramping up. So we're doing a lot of different things on competitor keywords and things like that. It's only spent $47. The St. Louis competitor keyword campaign has already produced 2 conversions. The same pattern is available in Little Rock. It just hasn't activated yet. We haven't kind of figured out the right place to go do that yet. All 3 of these are a work in progress. The 5.7x ROAS we're hitting is before any of that is solved. Now, here's the takeaway. If you're running Google Ads for a service-based or home contracting or real estate investment type business, especially anything high ticket where one customer is worth thousands and thousands of dollars, go pull your data right now and ask one question. How many deals, how many contracts did each of these campaigns produce? Not leads, not conversions, not form fills, contracts, closed business, revenue. If your agency can't answer that question, if they're sending you reports full of cost per click and conversion rate, but they can't tell you which keyword produced your last 10 closed customers, then you're being optimized for the wrong thing. The fix, right, is figuring out how to get this data back into Google Ads. So you likely, if you didn't answer those questions or your agency can't answer those questions, you need a different agency. It's about wiring your CRM to your ad platform so the algorithm learns on real revenue. That's the entire move. The agency, the prior agency in this case, had access to the same WhatConverts. They had access to the same Salesforce. They didn't connect them in a way that trained Google on contracts. We did, and that's it. If you found this video useful, make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment with your thoughts. If you're interested in having a conversation with our team, getting a free strategy audit, getting a free Google Ads audit, heck, whatever you're needing, there's a link to book a call with us in the description. I post real strategies, real client success stuff each and every single week. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.